Hello, it's me, Reuben K., the only member of the Lollipop Guild who formed an unlikely friendship and intense erotic relationship with one of the flying monkeys. And welcome to Come to Daddy, the podcast for people who won't let their therapist remove their shoelaces and belts because then the outfit won't gel. This week, I'm on a gay cruise. That's right, I'm floating around the Mediterranean doing shows and having fun and doing people. I don't want to say I've had a lot of sex on this cruise, but I will say I have so little semen left in my body that last night I had to fake my orgasm by sneezing on a twink's back. Amanda, how are you?
Well, I just have to... All I can do is take solace in the fact that both my parents are no longer with us. And therefore they're not going to ask me what I'm doing for work, and therefore I don't have to tell them about this podcast, and therefore they don't have to hear that. Apologies. I used to apologise for Reuben. I've sort of forgotten to do that now. He genuinely is on a gay cruise somewhere in the Mediterranean. You'll notice from the audio on the upcoming podcast that with his international jet set lifestyle, everybody was in a different location. So the audio is a little bit patchy, and it's just the way he rolls. Enjoy, come to Daddy.
My guest today is a Spanish-Welsh comedian who receives different levels of commitment and support from his parents when it comes to his work. His mum travels to almost all of his gigs, offering emotional support and feedback on his material, and his dad sometimes likes his Facebook post. As both my therapist and the border security guard at Heathrow said while they looked at my baggage, we've got a lot to unpack here. Come to Daddy, Ignacio Lopez.
Thanks for having me. Can't wait to chat.
My mum also has notes on my material and consistently offers it, unasked for.
Yeah.
Just feels like I have a right to. And it drives me fucking crazy. How do you deal with it?
I'm not too bad about it. I mean, she's my mother. I think we're quite honest with one another. So if she wants to give me advice, I don't have to take it. I can hear it, but I don't have to act upon it.
Oh my God, you're so much more sanguine. I take it as a complete criticism of my entire identity. Sort of like umbilical whiplash, just cracking around. This is my parental questionnaire. I ask the same questions of all my guests, and it gets us started. It gives us like a broad overview of your story. Quickfire answers.
Cool.
Names of your parents.
Ignacio and Yvonne.
Beautiful. Oh my God, I love an Yvonne. Yvonne sounds like it should have its own dessert.
Yeah, yeah, or at least, a section of the menu.
What are their ages?
I'm not 100% sure. I should know that. But my mother claimed to be 21 well after I went past 21 years of age. So I knew something was off. I think they're both in their 60s, but I'm not. It could be anywhere between 63 and 69, which is a great number.
There's it's one of the favorites. Where do they live?
So my mother lives in Pontedawe in South Wales. And my father lives in Menorca, the smaller island next to Mallorca, where I grew up.
I'm guessing with that distance between them, they're no longer together?
It's not a long-distance relationship. I don't think they've spoken for some time, not just because of the distance. So,
right. I see. When was the last time you spoke to them?
I saw, weirdly, my mother's been away for months in Tenerife, so I hadn't seen my mother physically for about a year. We chat every now and again on the phone, but she got home and she came to my show in Swansea last night, so very recently to my mom.
That's lovely. And Dad, not so recently?
Not so recently, no. He like you said, he likes my Facebook posts. That's kind of like the most interaction we get, is like the occasional thumb up or thumb down, depending on what material I've posted, etc. He shares things occasionally as well, which is nice, and it means it gets a new audience as well, because his Facebook friends aren't necessarily my target audience, for stand-up comedy. So it's quite nice to see
who are his Facebook friends.
Mainly my family in Spain. So that's, and occasionally I'm talking about, and a lot of them don't speak English. So, but they'll all click like as soon as he shares something, which is not, I think they just like to see me.
Yeah.
They can see I'm still alive. That's kind of what they can see. I'm out there doing stuff.
I do think sometimes with comedians that their family, the people that make up their family or the demographic that makes up their family is never the audience, but it's always because it's the material.
Yeah, definitely. So they make up, especially more recently, I've started talking a lot more about my family and stuff in my material. I used to keep it quite vague, but now I've started going into specifics.
How did your family deal with sort of being talked about or represented on stage through your lens?
Usually, especially if my mother's at a gig, she's fine with it. But one time, I think the moment she snapped was when I was talking about, I was asking people in the audience what the worst Christmas present they'd ever received was. And I said, whatever people give me, I can top it. And then I said what it was. And my mother had bought me that present. And I hadn't specifically said my mom bought it for me, but she immediately piped up at the back of the room. And I was like, oh yeah, that's my mother. And she was like, what was wrong with the present? And I said, can you wait till the end of the joke so I can explain why it's the worst present of all time?
What was that present?
Yeah, so that's the only time she's ever lost it. My mother bought me. I'll tell you what the present was, and then I'll tell you what the reason it was the worst present I've ever received. My mother bought me Friends Series 7 on DVD. And the reason that's the worst present I've ever received is because the year previously, my mother had bought me the complete Friends on DVD. So she got me not only something she'd already bought me, but a lesser version of it, like a smaller segment of it. So that's why it was the worst present of all time.
Finally, at what percentage do you blame / credit your parents for how you turned out?
Oof. I think 100% blame.
That's good. That's interesting.
Yeah.
We've only had one other 100%, and they are not a healthy person. What I'd love to get from you is like a little 30-second description of your parents. Like, what do they look like? What's their, do they cook? What's their vibe?
So my father is a 6'5", like taller version of me, basically, a little bit darker.
Do you have his number?
Sorry,
I do, but I think it's disconnected. No, he cooks. He was a chef for a long time as well, so he had sort of bars and restaurants. He learned how to make pizzas when he was very young by a little old Italian guy who lived in Mallorca. And then my dad went off to open up his own pizzeria, and then multiple restaurants and bars and stuff since then. He tried to bring Spanish food to Wales. He also worked in a rugby club for a little while, making food for them, and they just wanted very basic, cuisine, pie, chips, that sort of thing. And he was like bringing them like traditional Spanish food, and it wasn't. It didn't last very long.
Please tell me that you are writing a sitcom about your 6'5" gorgeous Spanish father cooking for a rugby club in Wales. And can I please audition to be one of the napkins? And Yvonne, what's Yvonne like?
So my mother is, shorter, slim, Irish Welsh lady, dark hair as well, but quite pale, different complexion, very freckly, very friendly, loves to chat, would talk anyone's ear off, loves to tell stories like her grandfather, like her father, my grandfather. And she's just, very independent and sparky. She goes out and starts businesses at a whim. And she went out to Spain, having, speaking no Spanish at the time, just decided to go out there and work, and that's how she met my dad. So yeah,
I love that when we tell these stories about our parents, because they're our parents and there's nostalgia, we go, isn't that amazing? Isn't that romantic? Isn't that brave? And when we hear like of people our age or younger do go and do that, we go, you are a fucking idiot.
Yeah, absolutely. It all seems, we romanticize the past. I mean, I'm sure that these people on their gap years currently, I'm sure their stories are going to sound fantastic in 50 years, but currently we just think they're wankers.
Absolutely. When you were growing up, what was it like growing up with a dual nationality? Was it like a blessing or a curse?
I think I didn't fit in anywhere. Like in Spain, I was kind of the odd one out. I was too Welsh to be Spanish, and then in Wales, I was too Spanish to be Welsh. So
the kids were kind of quite cruel. Like a fair bit of bullying at the start. How did your parents handle that?
My
Were they
dad
engaged?
was a little bit. My father, I remember him telling me when I was quite young that if anyone ever picks on me, and I was a very little kid, he was like, if anyone ever picks on me, and I don't think this is advice any parent should give a child. My father said, anyone ever picks on you, said that, that just ball up your fist and hit them on the nose as hard as you can. So, you
Solid.
know, it's I was tiny as well. I wasn't gonna get away with that. It doesn't matter how hard I throw a punch. It doesn't mean I could take a run up. You know what I mean? And it's not gonna make any impact. It's just gonna annoy them. They say bullies back down if you kind of attack
Hmm.
them. Not if you are, a 2 foot Spanish Welsh kid. You know what I mean? It's not gonna happen. So I felt a bit outmatched.
I do like that your dad's advice to his son going into grade school was essentially the same advice you give to a new person in prison. It's just like, you find the biggest, baddest guy in there and you smack them down with a lunch tray and show them that you're the boss. Like, it's an educational facility, Dad.
Yeah. Yeah, so it wasn't the best advice. I think
No.
my mother was very protective.
Mm.
I think, I didn't tend to explain much about what was going on in school anyway, but if it ever did come out, if I was having a bad time, then my mother would be quite supportive, but she gave the opposite advice, find a teacher, which is more safer kind of like route than, getting into a fight first day of school.
What shape did the bullying take at school?
Mainly kind of like verbal and stuff, but physicality just sort of pushing me over.
Mm.
You know, people. Ignacio is a difficult name for if nobody's ever heard it to pronounce, especially in Wales. Very different names, and the nickname I got in school wasn't Nacho or anything shorter than that. They just used to call me Spanish prick, which just became like a kind of that's just what they called me.
The amazing
So
thing is,
yeah,
in comedy, that is now a USP.
exactly. I should have made my website SpanishPrick.com, or at least
It,
my OnlyFans. My
it,
OnlyFans
abs-
should be Spanish Prick.
it absolutely screams Twitter handle to me.
And Ignacio, were you at school in Spain as well, or with the
Yeah, I did.
same kind? Oh God, how?
Yeah, so the way I compare it is I met when I was later on in my teens, I met somebody who'd been in a military family, and like involves a lot of moving around and that kind of thing, and that's kind of close to what I felt to in my childhood than a lot of people, because we didn't even stay in one place in Mallorca. My dad would open up different bars and restaurants around, and we'd hop from place to place. So
At
I didn't
what
get
point did
much
you
of a
start to realize your dad may not have been an entrepreneur, but a con man?
I think it was just it's a seasonal thing in Spain. What's annoying is like, especially if you live in a tourist area, you don't, the businesses don't run during the winter. So
Mm.
people go to mainland, or, they find something else to do in a different parts. So you find yourself moving around a lot doing this. And my mom, both of my parents, both self-employed their whole lives.
Right.
My grandparents as well. Like my
What
grandfather
does
came
your
over from
mum do?
Ireland. Right now she's retired, but she used anything. She'd open up shops, retail shops, clothing,
Mm.
furniture. She tries a bit of everything really. Whatever people are
Mm.
hoping to buy, then she'll open up a shop selling it.
Did you all kind of work in the restaurants in your dad's businesses as well?
Yeah, and something I haven't really written into my stand-up yet is that I don't know if people know this in the UK. It's legal for a child to work if they live on the premises. If it's a family business, it's legal for a child to actually work as a
Mm.
job. So I think from like 11 years of age or something. So I think I was younger than that, collecting glasses and putting
That
cleaning
is,
tables or whatever.
we've all, I think every single person has been in a European country on a holiday at some point and been like, that bartender looks 10.
Yeah, my mustache didn't come through till a couple of years after that. So I couldn't even pass. I was a very young looking kid. So yeah, it was definitely something dodgy there.
And now you look like a sort of like a sexy ballroom dancing rabbi. It's beautiful. Do you think you also share your sense of humor with your parents?
Yes, in a way. I mean, so one of the things I kind of have realized is that comedy is it's like a language. You kind of tune into
Mm.
somebody's sense of humor, and it almost feels like you're speaking a different language. And my parents have both got very different senses of humor, but I kind of have a bit of both of them.
Hmm.
So my father is a bit more dry, a bit more sarcastic. My mother really hates sarcasm, which isn't ideal because I'm a stand-up comedian. That's kind of a big part of what I do and live my lifestyle.
Well,
But
that is why she does come to your gigs and heckle.
exactly, she's there to just be like, stop being so sarcastic all the time. So that's kind of what I get from her.
there's a lot of cliches in comedy that you're doing it as a sort of like I guess like a way to grab attention from parents or get approval from parents, especially especially from kids who have had absent parents. Do you feel there's any truth to that with what you do?
I think so. Even though I wasn't an only child, I was quite, I just loved film and movies and just kind of escapism and doing things by myself. And I think a lot of the time I was kind of like trying to maybe show off as well to my parents and trying to, get attention and stuff. And that definitely translates. It definitely works.
I think the definition of a comedian is a middle child that gives off only child vibes.
Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely translates. I remember the first time my mother came to watch me do stand up. I hadn't been going very long, and I just wanted to warn her in advance. I was like, she'd not been to a comedy club before, and I said, look, this it can be a bit sort of swearing. She was like, don't worry about it, it's fine. And I went up, and I've never sworn so much on stage in my entire life. It's like I wanted to prepare her, just get it all out of the way
Hmm.
right up front.
Yeah.
So I dropped every swear word I knew in that set and came off. It was fine, it was, and she was very, afterwards very complimentary and stuff. And the only time my father's ever seen me do stand-up comedy, so he came over to Wales for a little bit to sort some stuff out. And while he was in, he came to watch a show. And that's the time I chose. I did a similar thing as well. That's the time I chose to talk mainly about him, and like him not being around when I was a kid and stuff. Very different reactions from my parents. He was complimentary after, but he like didn't heckle or anything, or just didn't really have anything to contribute. It's just kind of like, yeah, well done, whatever.
Whenever the parents come, there's always an air of something. And I know there are certain jokes that I pull from my set if my parents are in the audience.
Yeah,
And sometimes there are certain jokes that I'll add in, but they're not pushing boundaries. Um, but then to kind of have your parent at the end be vaguely nice is
yeah, it's the
worse than
worst.
if they'd hated it.
For sure. At least hatred, you've got something to work with.
Yeah. Have you noticed as you get older that you are like turning into your mum or dad?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I get like frustrated like my dad does. So I am terrible at waiting. Like I can't queue up for anything. I don't mind waiting for a podcast to be recorded, for instance. But if I'm in a
Thank God
queue,
for that. Thank God for that, Ignacio, or we wouldn't
but
have one. Thank you.
but if I'm in the queue for a coffee shop and it's taking too long, I'll just, even if I've paid for the coffee, I'll just leave.
Mm.
I can't deal with it. I hate waiting, which is ironic as well because Spanish people are very late all the time, which is something I've fought against my whole life. I've just always tried to be early because it's a bit of a stereotype. And with my mom, like I'm a chatterbox with people as well. I feel like from my mom, I can talk to anyone. I'll go out
Mm.
and make friends if I'm the only person in a bar or something. I'll go over and say hi, bore them with stories about about growing up in Spain.
I don't know how this happened, but I feel like I've inherited my stepmother's kind of anglicized waspishness. In that if I'm
Okay.
in a bar, like my dad, this like little Russian guy, my mum, this ebullient kind of German woman, they make friends with everyone. And me, for some reason, when I get in a bar, I'm like, I will sit with my gin and tonic. Nobody talk to me. My entire world is at the rim of this glass.
Got you.
Do you feel like when your parents come to your gigs or when you interact with them now, do you get an active sense of like pride that that they're proud of you?
Yeah, I think so. I think they're both quite positive about it, really. Like, I think it took a long time. I've been doing stand up for 13 years, and it took a long time for me to kind of get any traction or start doing well at it. And I think they were kind of looking at their watches and calendars about 5 years in, going like, "Where's this going, Ignacio? Why are you not on TV yet or whatever?" So it took a
Mm.
bit longer than they were expecting, but I got there. I made my point.
Do you think you've ever let them down in any way?
One thing I've inherited from my dad as well is like, kind of terrible at communicating long distance, or sort of getting back to messages. I should definitely talk to my mother more. I should definitely make an effort to. I think that disappoints her a little bit when she hasn't heard from me in a long time.
I have yet to hear a mother say, I could see my children less.
Yeah. Yeah.
we're up to the pick and mix. Pick and mix, pick and mix. It's time for us to do pick and mix. And today you have chosen, drumroll please, Amanda.
It's quite hard.
There's a lot of saliva on that microphone now.
Got a sore tongue.
No, it's so unfair.
Well, things like, I mean, you can probably appreciate that, parents often say things that quite critical, that they don't necessarily mean it to be as critical as it is. But I remember just sitting next to my father once in a car, and he just sort of pulled over and he said, "Do you have any pride in your appearance?" and I was just trying to process it. I still don't think I'm over it. I don't think quite. I was like, I'm not at work or anything. I was just wearing sort of casual clothes. I wasn't.
No, describe the ensemble for us.
I think I was wearing. I was probably wearing like a t-shirt. I'm pretty much wearing what I'm wearing now, like jeans, t-shirt, hoodie, and like some boots. But my father just said, do you not have any pride in your appearance? Like, what do you think about? I'm not gonna just dress in what do you want, a suit and tie? To just go from one place to another in a car with him. I don't know what.
Is he quite a smart dresser?
He can be, yeah. Although he's not one to criticize. He used to walk around. I remember the back pocket fell off a pair of his jeans once. He wore them for years around, and you just got this faded impression of a pocket on the back of his jeans. Which is, to be honest, they're probably selling stuff like that in shops now. That's
would
probably
pay extra for that.
As you get older, you do start to care much less about your appearance. And I remember my father in his 70s refused to get anything mended, refused to it's fine, it's completely fine. And he had a pair of trousers where the pocket had worn out, and you could literally see his testicles through the pocket, through the bottom of the pocket. And my mum would say, "You can't go out." We'd be like, "You can't go out in those. And he would go to the shops, and he would, if he was commando, I mean, it was mortifying. He's no longer with us. I feel I can share this now. But he wouldn't get it mended. It's going to get worse.
It sounds intentional. No. I'm sorry, Amanda. That sounds like he wanted those boys to breathe.
Specialist item of clothing.
Look, I'm not far off. I've only recently replaced a pair of jeans that I've had for the last 3 years on tour, because the back, just below where a butt should meet a thigh, but in what my body is a passive aggressive handoff of duty, where my back just says to my legs, "Your problem." Both of that across both legs was these huge tears that exposed thigh, it exposed cheek, it exposed gooch and ball, depending on heat, on how warm it was and how relaxed I was.
It's like my dad.
Yeah.
I think this is a thing.
It looked like someone was trying to poach 2 very oddly colored eggs, just sort of hanging out the side on a public transport. All right, so this is the final part of Come to Daddy, and it's a little segment, my favorite segment, that I call "Shall I Be Mother?"
Shall I be mother?
And that's where you, Ignacio Lopez, get to stare into these whirling horror shows that I call eyes.
It's fantastic. What are you talking about?
Thank you. You can say that was a test and you passed. If I could produce moisture, I'd be sweating right now. You get to look into my eyes and imagine that I am your mother or your father, or both if we have enough Vaseline, and you get to say whatever you would like to say. So if I was one of your parents now, Ignacio Lopez here on Come to Daddy, what would you say to me?
I would say, Yvonne, I think I left my glasses in your car last night. So if you could return them to me, that would be fantastic.
Yep, fair.
I think the camera froze as well. I thought that was a very... The camera froze, so I just had you staring at me for a good length of time after that. And I thought, yeah, that's probably how my mother would react to that.
I was being still. I have stillness innately in my body. I'm like an Enya record. And
no, I would definitely tell my mother that I appreciate everything she did for me the whole time. And I'd say to my father that, look, I forgive you. That's all I'd say to my father.
What do you think he'd respond to that?
He'd probably do exactly the same way he did the first time he saw me do stand-up, go, yeah, okay.
All right, thank you so much for coming to Daddy, Ignacio Lopez.
Thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
That was the incredible Ignacio Lopez on Come to Daddy. Ignacio, where can the listeners, our beautiful little daddyettes, see, smell, touch, feel, or hear more of you?
Well, I don't have an OnlyFans called Spanish Prick yet, but if anyone wants to get in touch with me or find out more about where I'm touring, so I'll be going on tour every year. I tour and do something at comedylopez.com. Nobody pronounces my name as accurately as you do, Reuben, so I've had to just go for Comedy Lopez. It's much easier for people to find me. comedylopez.com. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, it's just Comedy Lopez. Come check me out and come see a show live.
Ignacio, thank you so much.